And they believe that they are watchers or guardians that are keeping them safe and protecting them from danger. The highest respect.
When we think of mummies and mummification, we usually think of ancient times long ago. Whether it's a well-respected or widely hated political leader, or a tradition for an entire tribe of people, mummification is definitely still around. And on today's list, I'll be talking about some modern people who had their bodies mummified. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin was a revolutionary Russian politician and was the head of government of Soviet Russia and later the Soviet Union. After suffering 3 strokes, Lenin passed away in 1924. After he passed away, his body was embalmed and preserved and is still on display in the Red Square Mausoleum. While being embalmed, they actually removed his brain so that they would be able to dissect it at a later date. The sarcophagus that Lenin's body is in was replaced once in 1940 and once in 1970, and during the Second World War, his body actually got moved from 1941 to 1945 to ensure its safety. In our number 9 spot today, we have Eva Perón. Eva was the First Lady of Argentina from 1946 until she passed away in 1942. In 1950, Eva was diagnosed with cervical cancer, but that information was kept from her by her husband. Although she didn't know what was wrong with her, she knew that she was very sick. The reaction to her passing was huge, as there were thousands of people who got injured in an attempt to be near her body as it was being moved, with lineups for weeks of people trying to see her body lie in state. Pedro Ara was eventually approached and asked to embalm Eva's body. Eva's body was on display for 2 years while a monument to her was being made. During this time, her husband ended up being overthrown in a coup and had to flee the country in a hurry. Because he was unable to make plans for her body, it actually went missing for 16 years, which I truly cannot believe. In 1971, they were able to locate her body, although it had been damaged in its move. After being displayed in her husband and his new wife's dining room for a while, after his passing, her body now lies in a family tomb that is extra secure. In our number 8 spot today, we have Luang Pho Dang. Luang was a Thai Buddhist monk before his passing in 1973. He was 70 years old at the time and passed away while meditating. He knew his passing was coming, so before he died, he stated that if he did not decompose, he would like to remain in the temple in an upright position to inspire future generations. He used a practice of self-mummification that involved him reducing how much he ate and drank, eventually passing away of starvation. In the 7 days before his death, he didn't eat or drink, but only focused on meditating. This mummification process worked to preserve most of his skin and internal organs, but unfortunately not his eyes. So while his body is still on display, it does feature a pair of sunglasses to make it look a lot less creepy. In our number 7 spot today, we have Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il was the supreme leader of North Korea after the death of his father in 1994 and until his death in 2011. North Korean officials called upon some Russian scientists in 2011 to help them with its embalming process for his body. Kim Jong-il's body rests in a sarcophagus made of filtered glass so that he keeps his rosy complexion. Both Kim Jong-il and his father Kim Il-sung had their bodies embalmed after their passing, and their bodies are displayed not too far away from each other. Kim Jong-il's body is wrapped in a red blanket with matching flowers surrounding it, and it serves as quite a tourist attraction. In our number 6 spot today, we have Ferdinand Marcos. Ferdinand Marcos was the president of the Philippines from 1965 to 1986 and is known as being an extremely corrupt leader. He was known for being a cruel and brutal dictator who is said to have made his living off of the backs of other people. Before his passing, he had to flee the Philippines and head to Hawaii, where him and his family lived in luxury while he left the people living in the Philippines in extreme debt. Ferdinand ended up passing away in Honolulu on September 28, 1989. The new Filipino government actually refused to have his body flown back to the Philippines for the next 4 years. After his body was finally back in the country, his widow refused to bury him until he was given full military honors. Of course, this was met with a lot of backlash, so his body was placed inside a refrigerated mausoleum until 2016, when he was finally buried on November 18th inside the Heroes Cemetery. At number 5 spot in our halfway mark today, we have Mao Zedong. Mao was the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from its inception in 1949 until he passed away in 1976, and he was also the founder of the People's Republic of China. In the last few years of his life, his health was declining, and many speculated it was in part due to his chain-smoking habit. After suffering 3 heart attacks in 1976, he passed away on September 9th of that year. His body was embalmed and wrapped in a Chinese Communist Party flag while it lay in state. 1 million people came to visit his body during the week it was there. On September 17th, his body was moved and his organs were preserved in formaldehyde, and eventually his body was moved to his final resting place in a mausoleum in Beijing. In our number 4 spot today, we have Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy was an English philosopher and was very involved in social reform. He is certainly the oldest person on this list, but definitely needed to still be included. Jeremy is best known for his work involving gender equality, animal rights, law reform, and economics. He passed away in 1832 at the age of 84, but before his death he gave very specific instructions as he wanted to be dissected so that he could help advance science, but after the dissection he wanted to be preserved. He asked to be dressed in clothes and a hat and sat in a chair with his staff and wanted to appear as though he was engaging in thought and to be placed in an appropriate box for viewing. His mummified head was a little too creepy, so it was actually replaced with a wax one. The real mummified head used to be on display with the body, but with repeated student pranks, it was locked away for a while until last year when it was moved again and is now displayed at the University College London Student Centre on Gordon Square. In our number 3 spot today, we have Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh was the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam from 1945 to 1955 and was the first President of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam from 1945 to 1969. His ideologies were most similar to a Marxist, and he is known as one of Vietnam's most well-respected leaders. He passed away on September 2nd, 1969 at the age of 79 years old due to heart failure. Right after his passing, a huge mausoleum was constructed in his home city in honor of him. His will stated that he would like to be cremated, but unfortunately that wish was not honored. Instead, his body was embalmed and placed on display in the mausoleum in Hanoi. In our number 2 spot today, we have Alan Billis. For years, researchers have been fascinated with ancient Egypt and a lot of their mysteries and practices. Mummification is certainly one of the most interesting pieces of our history, and 2 researchers decided they wanted to try and determine exactly how ancient Egyptians did it, with a mix of salts, spices, and waxes. For years, researchers have been fascinated with ancient Egypt and a lot of their mysteries and practices. Mummification is certainly one of the most interesting pieces of our history, and 2 researchers decided they wanted to try and determine exactly how ancient Egyptians did it, with a mix of salts, spices, and waxes. In 2009, a 59-year-old taxi driver named Alan Billis was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he happened to see an ad that was looking for a body donor. Alan decided that once he passed, he would like to donate his body to be mummified in the name of this research, and as it turns out, he was the only person who responded to the ad. In 2011, Alan passed away, and it was time for archaeological chemist Stephen Buckley, along with Egyptologist Joan Fletcher and their team of scientists, to get to work. Alan's body was first coated in pine resin, beeswax, and sesame oil, and then was placed in a natron salt bath for a month. After the month was up, he was wrapped in bandages and then coated in oils, resin, and spices. This process turned out to work exactly as researchers were hoping, and once the bandages had been removed, Alan was placed in the Gordon Museum of Pathology at King's College London. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Anga tribe. The Anga tribe, who are also known as the Kuka Kuka, are a people living in the high mountainous region in southwestern Morobe in Papua New Guinea. The mummification process for the Anga people is a lot different than the other ones on this list. First, they will cut the body open to drain the fluids, and then they will be sewn shut. Their tongue, heels, and palms are cut off to be given to their spouses. The body will then be covered in clay, and it will be placed in a hut and cured with smoke for about a month and a half. Once this process is finished, the body will then be displayed on a cliffside so that they can overlook their village. Of course, missionaries have gone and tried to change these Anga traditions, but the Anga believe that if they can still see the face of someone who has passed on, that means that their spirit is still with them. I can certainly understand why this process is so important to them. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.